Coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about a Broncos rookie that no one seems to be paying much attention to. And I can kind of understand why, given based on where he was drafted, but I want to give him some flowers on today's show. And I want Broncos Country to know more about Mr. Troy Franklin, because Salt of Solomon, a longtime viewer on the channel, has been commenting nearly daily saying, we got to talk about Troy Franklin. So you know what, Salt of Solomon? This episode, this one's for you, buddy. So let's talk about Troy Franklin, the Broncos' fourth-round draft pick out of Oregon. Remember, Denver traded up early into round 3, or to day 3 of the draft, to get Troy Franklin. He was a bit of a surprise slip from the second day of the draft, falling out of rounds 2 and 3, but Denver secured him with one of the first picks in round 4. Now, he's got really solid size, 6'1", 176 pounds, so a bit of a slender-ish frame, a bit of more of a lengthy wide receiver, but great speed, 4.41, 40-yard dash. I thought he would be more of a second-round draft pick. 6'1", 4.41, 40. Like, those two don't go together very often. Now, the pro I've got for him is he's a vertical threat. Like, ball in his hands before he makes the catch, he has the ability to push the ball down the field and create big plays for the Ducks. He's a bit of a big play machine. He may not be someone you turn to on 3rd and 5 to move the sticks, but he's someone on 1st and 10 that can get you out to midfield. Now, the con, when watching more of the tape again and just reading about my draft notes I had for him, he relies a little bit too much on body catches, which in college football you can probably get away with, but in the NFL, you got to have strong hands. You got to have the ability to kind of pluck that football out of the air. Now, Troy Franklin was predominantly just a 2-year starter at Oregon, played 3 years altogether in Eugene, made a huge jump from his sophomore season to his junior season. Went from 891 yards to 1,300 yards. By the way, all those stats you see for 2023, they're pretty much Oregon's single-season records. 81 grabs, a record. 1,300 yards, a record. 14 touchdowns, a record. Troy Franklin was one of the most dominant and productive players in college football last year, which production from college football to the NFL, it's not an apples-to-apples thing. But you can definitely go and look and see he's done the job. Now we got to hope it can kind of translate over to the NFL game speed. So before we get further into this topic, week 1's going to be here before you know it, and we're doing a like battle with the Seahawks channel here, who Denver plays week 1 for the entire month of July. And I'll be honest, they're kicking our asses right now. I'm not going to stand for it. If you want to take down the Seahawks in week 1, let's start by winning in the month of July. Hit that thumbs up button and like today's video. Now, some more background on Troy Franklin. He was a first-team All-Pac-12 player, second-team All-American last year, and in his sophomore year, he was a second-team All-Pac-12 player. Like I said, he's the Oregon single-season leader in receptions, yards, and touchdowns. He was an extremely explosive player for the Ducks last year. He had 8 games of 100-plus receiving yards, and he also had 8 receptions of 40 or more yards in 2023. The good news for Troy Franklin is joining a wide receiver room where he's got a chance to kind of break through the ice, so to speak. Because this Broncos wide receiver room, it's not like murderer's row, right? It's not this gauntlet that no rookie could break the ice above him. Cortland Sutton comes off a really strong 2023 campaign, 10 touchdowns. But before that, we hadn't seen much from him since that 2019 season. So now we got to see that be not an outlier, but a consistency. Marvin Mims, second-round pick who was really good on special teams, but there's a lot that we have to see first before we can start believing on the field as a receiver. I'm optimistic about him, but it is a little bit of a, we got to see it to believe it first. And then Josh Reynolds is just your patented wide receiver 3. He'll get you 600 yards. He won't get you any more, and he probably won't get you any less, but that's the role of Josh Reynolds. And then there's Tim Patrick, who is coming off, unfortunately, back-to-back season-ending injuries. And I'm just going to let Tim Patrick do what he wants to do. Like, if he has a great year, I'm all for it. If he doesn't, I'm not going to bash the guy or anything like that. I'm just happy to see him back on the football field. So anything Tim Patrick gives you, it kind of feels like house money at this point. I'm not going to carve out a huge role that Tim Patrick has to fulfill in 2024. But altogether, when you look at those top 4 receivers, there's no dominant guy. Like, there's not a player on that receiving list that's going to demand 150 targets, that's going to need the ball in his hands 8 times a game. Like, they just don't have that receiver. They're just not at that stage of this franchise at the moment, right? They kind of hoped Jerry Jeudy would become that guy. Ultimately, didn't pan out for a several amount of reasons, but it didn't happen. So there's an opportunity for Troy Franklin to get some snaps and then turn those snaps into targets. He's not dealing with competition that no rookie could overcome. Now, I've got more to share on this topic, but I do want to give some shout-outs really, really quickly to some recent subscribers here on the channel. So shout out to Jacob Medina, Brett Bruton, Devontae Reed, Giant Duck fan. I picked you just because I figured you might like this video. And then George Wyasa. Thank you guys so much for subscribing. I really appreciate the support. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do so. We'll get you a shout out on a future episode. Now, the odds of a day 3 wide receiver breaking out their rookie year, they're not high. Puka Nacua did it last year. He was a 5th-round pick by the Rams out of BYU. Now, I'm not going to say it's a short or a long list, but you can look at the last 5 years of wide receivers taken in day 3 of the draft, like Troy Franklin, and the amount of receivers that had over 400 yards, over 500 yards as a rookie. It's not a super long list, like I said, but it's also not an impossible list to break. Like, you had Dontavian Wicks, Demario Douglas, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Darnell Mooney, Gabe Davis, Darius Slayton, Hunter Renfrow. They all had solid seasons. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for Troy Franklin to have, a solid rookie season of 550 yards, 3 touchdowns. Like, those numbers are not unattainable because he was a 4th-round draft pick. It's been done in more than just once or twice over the last few seasons. Now, the Broncos themselves, they don't have an extensive history of very specific, don't get me wrong, day 3 rookie wide receivers being big producers their first year. In fact, the last guy to really go over 400 yards was in 1986, Mark Jackson. Before that, 1975, Rick Upchurch. So the Broncos themselves do not have a long list of round 4 receivers who had 400-plus yard seasons as a rookie. But hopefully, Troy Franklin can join this list and make it a threesome. Now, to remind everyone of the draft picks the Broncos had this year, you have Bo Nix, Jonah Ellis, Troy Franklin, Chris Abrams-Drain, Audric Estime, Devontae Vele, and then Nick Gargiulo. So 7 picks altogether. I'm excited to see what Troy Franklin can do. I do want to know what you guys think about this question. Who was your favorite pick from the draft this past year? Let me know down below in the comment section which pick your favorite one was. Mine, I'm going to go with Jonah Ellis. I don't think he's going to have a monster role his rookie season. They got Jonathan Cooper, Baron Browning, Nick Bonito. Like, those guys are pretty well established. But if an injury pops up and Ellis gets an opportunity to have 12 sacks and not be like a 24-year-old just picking on 19-year-old tackles, that says a lot to me. So I'm a big fan of the Jonah Ellis selection altogether. Probably my favorite value pick. I think he's going to be a really good player for this team and in this league. And he's got great lineage to prove that. By the way, before we get on out of here, if you want to get your hands on this Broncos t-shirt and hat combo, go to chatsports.com/DEN combo. You're not just going to get the hat, but you're going to get the t-shirt as well. I put this link in the comments and description of today's video. So go check it out today, chatsports.com/DEN combo. As always, we wrap up our summer videos with some summer hot takes. It is a high of 89 degrees today in Denver. So my golf tan lines hot take, Bo Nix will throw a go-ahead touchdown to Troy Franklin in Week 3 against the Buccaneers. Just kind of a gut feeling, right? Don't have anything to go off of. No factual basis on this whatsoever. There is no tendency of round 4 rookie receivers scoring go-ahead touchdowns in Week 3. I just kind of looked at that and go Bucs on the road? Maybe they're like, we don't see the Broncos much. Like, this is a weird matchup. We got this game. And all of a sudden, Troy Franklin, who? Everyone's looking at the score sheet in the press box. Like, oh, yeah, Troy Franklin. Round 4 pick last year out of Oregon. Go-ahead touchdown with 1 minute and 2 seconds remaining. So, remember this. Bookmark it. Circle back in Week 3. And then remind me. And hopefully, we're celebrating this together.